Native American Tribes by Jing Su. Time warp! Whoop, 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 whoop. The Woodlands. Imagine you're a little Iroquois girl. You live in your longhouse with two other families. Your granddad is the chief. It just finished raining, so the weather is kind of cool. This is what the inside of your longhouse looked like. This is what you would have worn. Change in location. The Northwest. Imagine you're an elderly man. You are a member of a Northwest tribe. You live in a cedar plank house with your daughter and her family and a bunch of other families. This is what the inside of a cedar plank house looks like. This is what the floor plan of a cedar plank house looks like. This is what you wore during ceremonies. Change in location. This is what the inside of a wickiup looked like. This is what your cradle would have looked like. Change in location. The Southeast. Imagine you're a teenage girl. You live in a chickie with your family. A chickie is a house with no walls. This is what you would have worn. How are they the same? The most important animals of these four tribes have a lot in common. For example, the Southeastern tribes and the Woodlands tribes think the deer is very important. These tribes use the deer for the same reason. Salmon was important to the people of the Northwestern tribes and the Great Basin, since they make their living fishing. They were caught several different ways. The animals that the Native Americans had caught had more than one use. Most of the Native American tribes used them the same way. The plants the Native Americans use have a lot of similarities. They have many of the same uses. One, for example, is they are all used to build homes. The Native Americans also collect the nuts and the berries that grow on them. They made many things from the bark of a tree. They wove baskets using the bark of a tree. One region actually made clothing from the bark of a tree. All of the plants that the Native Americans use have one more thing in common. They were all very important in the daily life of Native Americans. Native American clothing is very similar. Usually they are made from the skin of animals. As time went by, the material of the clothing changed. It changed from deerskin to cotton. When sewing machines were invented, they stopped making Native American clothing by hand. Although the clothing changed by time, they still had their similarities. How are they different? Although they have many similarities, the animals that the Native Americans caught have some differences. For instance, the animals are prepared in separate ways. The animals that are important to the Native Americans are also different. They also have different uses. For example, deer is not only caught for eating, but it was used for making clothing or tools. Fish was only caught for eating. With all the similarities the plants have, there are a few differences. Some of the trees shown at the left side of the page were used for many reasons. Some were only used for just one. The birch tree was used to build homes. The oak tree was known for the acorns on it. Most of these trees are used to build homes or carved to make artwork, such as totem poles. Some are used for both. They also grow in different climates. For instance, the bald cypress grows in warm, swampy climates, while the birch tree grows in a bit cooler climate. Native American clothing is different as much as it is the same. They have different designs based on their beliefs. They are made from different materials depending on what resources they could find. In the 1900s, Seminole girls were given sewing machines. They made beautiful patchwork clothing. The clothing was made from cotton instead of skin, and it was no longer handmade. Woodlands, an awesome place! The woodlands are full of natural resources. If they ran out of one thing, they could use another. For example, if an Iroquois man wanted a European shirt, he would trade the owner for a deerskin shirt. If the man wanted leather shoes, he could trade the European a pair or two of moccasins. The woodlands were very rich in natural resources, and that probably helped a lot when the Europeans settled there. The natural resources of the woodlands included many plants, animals, and more. From those natural resources, they can make clothing or tools or anything else. They can make baskets to carry things in and temporary shelters to live in. Many useful things were made from simple items, such as trees, rocks, nuts, and berries. Unlike the present day, the Indian tribes did not use money. You could give a man 2 white deerskin blankets, and he'll give you something valuable in return. It depends on what you traded. If you were rich in animals, houses, or anything valuable, you could trade with the Europeans easily. Imagine you're an Iroquois woman. The European settlers just came. They look very hungry. You see a basket with some glass mirrors and clothes and all the other good stuff. Your husband caught 2 deer, but you only need 1 to last you for the winter. You want the basket full of the mirrors and clothes, and you have more food than you need. What do? You trade! You walk over to a man and point to the basket full of stuff. You point to your extra deer, and then you point to him. He seems to understand you. He gives you the basket, and you give him the deer. Everybody got what they wanted. Yay! Eventually, the rest of the tribe caught on. After 1 week, you have 2 basketfuls of clothes, food, and many more. The people you traded with has a temporary shelter, an uncountable amount of deer, about 10 pairs of moccasins, and some clothing. Your husband has a collection of guns and 2 barrels of gunpowder. The people he traded with got a bunch of Iroquois weapons. Uh-oh, you got too much stuff. What do you do now? You trade! Now you have just what you need to have a good winter. As you probably recall, you had to point to get what you wanted. Don't worry, it won't be like that for long. After a while, the Native Americans learned to speak a little English. This made trading way easier. Now the Europeans and the Native Americans got along so well, like they were old friends. Unfortunately, things weren't always like this. The European settlers were overhunting the animals, so the Native Americans could not use any. They would constantly get in fights. The Europeans would build territories on Indian land. Not only did this eliminate more natural resources for the Indians, it also forced them to move out of their own land. The Indians had to find a new place to live in because their place was taken by their friends.